Douglass's most famous speech, probably, is "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." What's the context for this speech first, and why do you think it's so popular?
Well, the context is where the importance of it begins. It's 1852. Uncle Tom's Cabin has just been published. It's taken the world by storm. 1852 is a presidential election year. The conventions are beginning to happen. It's less than 2 years after the Fugitive Slave Act. It's an intense political moment in the larger American culture.
Tell me how it's constructed.
It's constructed, in my humble view, as a kind of symphony in 3 movements. That first movement or section is short. It's 5 or 6 pages of text, and it honors the Founding Fathers. It celebrates the genius of the Declaration of Independence by that very term. The second movement, as it is in most symphonies, is the longest.
Right.
It's about 10 pages, and it's a litany of all the horrors of slavery, from the slave trade, the holds of the slave ships, auction blocks, the domestic slave trade, you name it. And then, quite incredibly, he ends with a poem by none other than William Lloyd Garrison called "Go Sound the Jubilee." That is a speech aimed way beyond that hall. That's aimed at a readership in the country.
It sounds very radical to me. It
yeah,
sounds like a Malcolm X speech, not Martin Luther King.
Well,
Can you imagine the Board of Education in the state of Texas approving this speech?
No.
No.
And it is not the last time Douglass was invited to give an occasion speech.
Let's talk about a speech that Douglass gave in the middle of the Civil War, in fact, in 1863. And it's on the Proclamation.
He writes that speech in January 1863, after Lincoln had finally signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The speech is saying now, this Emancipation Proclamation does not just emancipate black people. It surely does that. It's going to put black men in this army, and that's revolutionary. But then he goes on to say, this proclamation frees the Confederate soldier, frees the Union white soldier, frees the country from itself, frees the country from its own history. And then it became the basis for recruiting black men into the Union Army, which he goes on the road to do by April, May, June, until he quit recruiting because of all the discriminations against black soldiers. But that proclamation in the Negro Army is Douglass's declaration of the turning point of the war.
Let's cut to 1894. It's a year, though obviously he's not aware of it, before he dies. And he gives a speech called Lessons of the Hour.
Well, that speech, Lessons of the Hour, he first crafts in 1893 when he's still in Chicago. And it's him finally rising to the question of lynching, which is broken out all over the country, especially in the South. And the speech, in essence, does this. He didn't just stand up and declare this is an outrage, this is terrible, this is horrible, how can human beings do this? He said, you know what? It's all about 3 excuses. The first excuse was the claim of insurrection under slavery. Why do we have to make slavery a police state and sometimes kill black people? Because they might lead to insurrection. Then it became the excuse, he said, of Negro rule, which meant during Reconstruction.
Of course.
You let all these freed black people out and you let them vote, and the world will go to hell. And then he says, now, we have the third excuse. Black men have been freed. They practice politics. And the next thing they'll do is they will start raping white women.
Venality.
It's the black beast theory. The speech ends with a passionate appeal to the natural rights tradition. No matter what you do to people, you can burn them, you can savage them, you can kill them, you can hang them, but you can't destroy these liberties, these rights, these creeds. You can read it and it may seem a bit hollow when you realize what he's just been analyzing. But it's Douglass. It's Douglass still saying, we have to sustain our belief in this and create a society around it, because otherwise the only thing left is basically a violent revolution. It's classic Douglass, and it's the last great speech of his life.